Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today I'm speaking with Omer Chomski, a PhD researcher in the history and philosophy of technology and science, and author of the paper Optimizing the Immeasurable, a critical examination of Neuro-Meditation Commodification. His work explores the relationship between technology, culture, meditation, and Buddhist traditions. Today, we will discuss neuromeditation, the limits of measurement, and what contemplative technologies might look like beyond the scientific framework. Hello, Mary. How are you, my friend?
Hi, I'm good, Kyle. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Good to have you. First of all, thanks for your presence today. It's a pleasure to talk with you and know about know a little bit more about your work, your visions around meditation, science, technology. So I think it will be a interesting conversation today. And yeah, so let's go. I think my first question is for you. What originally motivated you to investigate neuromeditation technologies from a critical perspective rather than primarily from a neuroscientific or clinical one?
Yeah. So there's a long answer and a short answer to that. So I'll try to do the long, not too long.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I was a tech entrepreneur, and I think being in developing tech, creating tech, and establishing my own company and facing all um, str the difficulties and the challenges of creating a product, bring it to users, monetize the product, scale the company. That was like a very personal experience that I had in my life. And then at some point I shifted to I was more interested in studying technology, study about philosophy of technology, about the history of technology, than creating technology, because I felt that um, you know a like the some of the currents that tech and industries that are taking are very unconscious and very deterministic, from market forces and views that we have. And we and I re- I I preferred thinking very clearly about technology before trying again to develop technology, like understanding this phenomena in the broadest sense. And then I started my studies of in science and technology studies, STS. And while reading an interesting book called Spirit Tech that I was reading for one of the seminars that I took in the studies, and I've stumbled upon this Spirit Tech book, which covered many range of new emerging spiritual technologies. And it's a very interesting book. I really recommend it. Maybe you can add it in the bio. That was really initiating me towards the research. And that's where I saw for the first time the neurofeedback meditation and the neurostimulation market, and the not only the market, but the initiative, the the scene, the science behind it. And the book was very, I think, very optimistic about these technologies, and also very developer centric. So it tells the story of these technologies from the developer's perspective, from the companies, from the scientists. So I was really excited because I'm a Buddhist practitioner, and I said, "Oh, wow, we can finally have like real technologies that can help us." And we all know that meditation sometimes sucks, and it's hard. Sometimes you don't have the knowledge or the will, or it can be tough. So this I was reading this thing and I was really excited, but I started to sense all kinds of biases that developers have because I was a developer. And I could sense that something in this optimistic language was not nuanced enough or not really comprehensive enough. And from my meditation and from my STS studies, from philosophy, from sociology, I knew that technologies are very, operates in a very different manner than what they were intended to do. So when technology is released into the market, it meets culture, it meets, you know, constraints and preferences, and that's also true for the developers. Developers are also have social constraints, so nothing is really isolated from, we're not separated from culture, from specific time in history, from influences that we have. And I felt that researching these technologies, looking at these technologies as cultural artifacts, rather than observing them as from, what they do to this part of the brain, or rather than speaking about, the outcomes of, oh, it helped people with PTSD, or so I was just trying to look at this as, cultural, historical artifacts.
Mhm.
And I think that perspective gave me, I think, maybe some new layers of criticism that were not present and I couldn't find anywhere, not in this book and not in all the literature about these technologies which I encountered.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. So, what is an artifact and what is an a cultural artifact? Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, I think um, rather than, we have the tendency to see, this is a very dualistic perspective that we might have as people,
Mhm.
uh, as we know from Buddhism, right?
Mhm.
That we're subject, we're looking at objects, and these objects looks kind of determinate. So, and especially with technologies, like we think that these are just tools. They stand there, we pick them up, we use them. It's a means to an end. We accomplish our goals, and like, this is technology more or less. But um, but these artifacts or technologies, they're socially embedded, they're socially constructed, as we like to say in science and technology studies or in philosophy of technology. So that means that, actually there's a very specific conditions that have made these artifacts to appear as they are, to function as they are. And these are not separated. If you really want to understand a technology or an artifact, you should take all these things in account, because your computer could have been very different from the particular, you know, um, definite set of features that it currently has. And so that kind of perspective gives you this, I think, more the ability to criticize and also to imagine, you know, other possibilities. So yeah, I think
Yeah, yeah,
that covers it.
amazing. So, yeah, like now targeting a little bit on neurotechnologies like EEG, neurofeedback. Do you think these types of technologies can genuinely deepen a meditation practice, or are they mainly useful for training particular mental states such as attention, relaxation, or concentration? What do you think?
Um, First of all, I want to say you, Kyle, you have way more hours on with these devices than me, and you're part of the community that were, really taking these devices to their limits. So I want to be very humble about, and in general, let's be humble about, what technology could or could not do because it it can change in the future, and it's also very different for different people. But I think ultimately, there is, the way that these technologies are developed. So you have neuroscience, we study meditation, we see which parts in the brain are more active, which brain levels, and then we take these models and we inject them into these neurofeedback devices or neurostimulation devices, and we say, maybe there's a different way to use these devices, but I think the default mode is like to give it to a meditator and say, all right, just sit down, put them on your head, and the device will do the work for you. And what the device do is actually it tries to give you feedback whether you're not in a specific state according to, the theory, the neuroscience theory, or the metrics or the data that the device was fed with. So is it not chasing a state? It is. I don't see currently a way that these specific devices could operate differently. Maybe you have a different view about it. I'm not saying anything about good, bad at this point. That's a different question. But at the moment, it's about chasing states.
Yeah. I think the interesting part, we always have to return to the basic function of our own metacognition in our mind, because the supreme device is already present in our mind, and I call metacognition, we can call lucidity of our minds. And sometimes these types of technology, like EEG, people can become like lazy in relation with metacognition, because there's a sense that the technology will offer this extra metacognition, or even replace my own metacognition with the data and with the feedbacks. So I think the devices sometimes can make people lazy in a sense to really work with this lucidity, with this metacognition. I even joke with my students that if they are on a vacation on a beach and they didn't bring their devices, this is not they have to practice in the beach without devices, but sometimes I forgot to bring my devices, so I will not meditate today. So I think this is the dangerous aspect in all the technologies, because we are losing the touch with our own internal gadgets, devices, and techs that we already have in our mind, because this extra device, this outside device, like machines or whatever, we think it can replace. So yeah, and it is definitely sometimes chasing states, right? People love this idea. I personally myself, I have a part in my own studies, and it's a curious thing to work with states, but yeah, I think the main idea is not to lose our touch with our own metacognition, our own lucidity, because this is the main important part in meditation in general, right? Like, yeah. So
yeah, just to take on
yeah.
I loved your so first I love your thinking of ourselves as tech. I don't know, maybe we have a chance to talk about philosophy of technology and like the views that we can gain from that. And yeah, I think there's we are a technological species, and it's a good way to think about it. But it doesn't mean that there's no dangers. There's no like dangers and risks and like thing we might lose on the way. And I like to like take what you said about the metacognition, and I think maybe it's just you said like metacognition and lucidity, you use them as parallels. Maybe I would like to suggest like that there's metacognition and there's awareness, which is luminous and clear. It's kind of the ultimate backdrop, and there's the metacognition, which is an essential cognitive function. The way I define it right now is like my meditation teacher calls it like the hook of knowing. So it's like, it's the first thing when you start meditating the first time, you start observing your own thoughts. So I take this as a metacognition. It doesn't have to be like awareness, like of the ultimate awareness. It has to be, the internal capacity. And you have to develop this like a muscle, right? Just to release it, at some point, because that becomes like an obstacle at a certain point if you want to get to the ultimate awareness. But it is still essential. And as you said, like taking this metacognition and like give it to a machine. So basically that's what these devices does, right? It's a very strong shamatha machine.
Yeah.
Maybe you have different definitions. Maybe as an experienced meditator, you did other things with these devices that are not that. But I think on the entry level, on actually the marketing level, on what this technology is kind of offered to the mass audience, this is what they offer.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think it's related. So, in your discussion of the quantified self, you show how meditation can become another activity that people score, track, and optimize. Is the problem measurement itself, or the psychological relationship we develop with the measurement?
Yeah. So I think that there are problems with both. I think the last one is the more like the more obvious one, and I think the more acute one. So let's start with the second one. You know, measuring, measuring the meditation, and getting the feedback, whether it, the devices like the Muse device is the most famous one. So, it has the birds, if you do good, the storms, if it's storm sounds, if you're not on track. It has the session report you get after the session, and you kind of see, the meditation results. And what we've all learned, I think, at least I learned when I started to meditate, is not to be judgmental towards the meditation. And then just to embrace, sometimes you have you're not concentrated. You can't focus on your breath or your body or whatever. And and if you're really judging yourself, then you're not doing it right. You're letting go of being judgmental. And I think for early meditators to start with these technologies, which gives you a score, it's hard not to become judgmental. Like you have to be, I think, quite advanced or in the wisdom axis of your path, to be able to look at the report and being not attached to it, or not really taking it so solid. So I think maybe, yeah, I want to say something.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's like, this is the part of the problem with, the target audience. I think this is something that I'm speaking up in my articles, like who these devices are actually for. Because right now, the way, that it's marketed, it's like the training wheels. It's for the beginners. And we already spoke about the problems of, not learning how to put effort, or not learning how to train your metacognition to be reliant on technology. But there is also the problem of being reliant to some kind of your brain becomes your guru, or your brain image becomes your guru, and then you kind of internalizes this as, you know, the meditation outcome. And this is when we spoke about cultural artifacts, you know. So this is part of being a cultural artifact, that is, you know, part of an artifact that is you know, a product of, you know, science as some kind of, you know, faith in results, in measurements, in we have to, if you don't measure it, then it's not effective. And sometimes some of the meditations that we have, the best meditations that we actually have are really bad ones when you're not concentrated. And you can have only this one moment of clarity within this storm that is, you know, way more important than, you know, being, you know, I don't know, in the third jhanas for an hour. And it's also related to where are you on the path, and we have to take it into account as well. So that was the second part of the question. The first one was, can you remind me the first one?
Yeah. Do you think neurotechnology? Sorry. Is the problem the measurement itself, or the psychological relationship we develop with measurement? Yeah.
Yeah. So that we spoke about the psychological.
Yeah.
But is there a problem with the measurement itself? So yes and no. I think, you know, we can do amazing things with neurotech. We can help people with PTSD, with you know, this is not even without meditation. Like we measure stuff. We can you know, develop some kind of a medicine with it. But when we speak about enlightenment or liberation or the mind with a capital M, so the mind, you know, in Buddhism, we speak of the mind as something that is immeasurable. So I think this is why I'm a bit less excited about science and Buddhism, you know, bringing the fourth turning of the wheel or the fifth turning of the wheel, you know, because I think fundamentally science is dualistic and reductionist. And this is part of its advantages, actually. This is, you know, this is a really powerful framework to do stuff without, you know, not saying anything bad about the scientific method in this regard. But when we try to, you know, reduce the mind to neural correlates, I think, you know, ultimately it's not going to work, or it's going to cause a lot of misunderstandings. We have to be very, very precise and clear about what we're trying to achieve here. What are we trying to do? And about the limits of what it probably won't ever be able to give us.
Yeah, amazing. So the next question, it's related with the last part of your answer. So you make an important distinction between meditative states and awakening. Do you think neurotechnology risks making people confuse unusual or pleasurable states of consciousness with genuine contemplative insight? So as you are saying, people can be confused with the output of the data, and the machine says to me that I'm enlightening, so now I will believe that I'm enlightening. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, let's say something good about these technologies.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, being really concentrated or being concentrated relatively to your normal state. So if people are really scattered, their minds are really scattered, and they use this device and they get this peace, you know, for I don't know, a few minutes, few hours after the session, then it's an amazing thing to give to a person. And maybe, maybe someone is not a Buddhist, is not a meditator, he just want to relax. He would use this device, there's and it could be insightful. You can suddenly realize that you want to treat better to your colleagues at work now that you're calm. And this is, I don't know, it's spiritual to me. It's like, it's not, maybe it's not, it won't give you the fruit, the full fruit, or in Buddhist terminology, it's like you won't be a Buddha, a complete Buddha afterwards. But it's a good thing to have. So yeah, and I think and even more so, like I think that in deep concentration, like if these devices are currently not really able to get you past like entry-level samadhi. That's at least the way I understand, because I haven't done the things that you've done with these devices. So maybe you can twerk it, or you can use it in a much more sophisticated way. But I speak about entry level. But if they could get you to some more advanced concentration, that's also that can be really insightful. I think this goes like, if we go more Buddhist geek to a more Buddhist geek discussion right now. So I think it goes to the questions of like yes and no jhanas, or yes and no meditative attainments. And personally, as someone who now I'm doing this Mahamudra and Tibetan nature of mind, non-dual. This is really the core of my practice. But in the past, I had this period when I practiced the jhanas, and I think it was really transformative. And just what you can do with concentration. So yeah, just to say, like, to wrap it up, to say, I think ultimately for emptiness, I don't see how these technologies currently help. Like, they can help with preparing the mind with some concentration towards emptiness practice, which is sometimes is essential.
Yeah, I think with my usage and studying and talking with a lot of practitioners inside, for example, the Muse community, the Muse EEG community, I can easily saw three types of practitioners who will use this type of technology like EEG. The first one, it's like the wellness practitioner. They will target directly into the bird algorithm, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And they will discover some good stuffs and benefits for their life, like be more calm, be more peaceful and centered, and even it helped them to become more productive in some sense in their own personal work. And this type of practitioner, maybe they will become a long time user, or maybe sometimes like a video game. For example, we had the PlayStation 4, but now we have the PlayStation 5, and so sometimes it in a long time, if we used in a long time, sometimes it's just another tech. Especially in Brazil, it's different because the technology, it's really expensive. So we have a tendency to be spend more time with the tech itself, because using the tech, because it's so expensive. So I put money, so I really have to use the tech. But I know for example, Americans or even Chinese market, it's every single day there's a lot of opportunities and cheap devices. And so the first practitioner for me, it's they will use in the wellness, and sometimes they will like abandon the tech and will trying to search another tech, and it's almost like an infinite process, like waiting for the next version of the tech.
Mm-hmm.
The second practitioner, it's the same, but maybe with the bird algorithm, they can be really interested about meditation, and they can find a sangha like a Mahamudra Sangha, for example, because, I used the bird algorithm. I'm happy with this, but I think I want more. I want more. And so it can be a bridge for them to reach
Mm-hmm.
teachers and a more deep practice. And the third practitioner, I think it's the third practitioner is the practitioner who exhausts the use of these technologies. And as we are talking in our last conversation, there are people in community who can easily master the birds, like people who are masters in Street Fighter video game, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have, it's really strange in some sense, but really interesting. People who easily master the bird algorithm and find a like almost a perfect score, like 100% calm. But with this mastering, we find a sense of exhaustion, like, okay, I mastered. There's no work anymore. It's almost like people become detached. So, okay, I mastered, and then they go into like raw measurement, like just passive graphs without algorithms, without feedback. And these types of practitioner, there is a sense of it's a healthy usage, because the tech sounds more like a tool for take a look into specific parts of the meditation path. But because of the exhaustion in the usage, they know now that they are rooted and grounded, and they know that it is not the final frontier. Even the masters of the bird's algorithm. So yeah, it's a way that this is a way I like to organize, and I'm seeing in the community itself. Yeah. Okay. So
I think it's a very the last guy, like the last type of guys, like it's a very long way to realize impermanence, but if you realize it in the end, so
yeah,
then it's okay.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
all
better.
about impermanence, definitely. Yeah. But
And for the first kind of users, I just wanted to say, because I also want to honor the fact that I first started to meditate with apps like Headspace,
yeah,
which are, you can look at it as a part of the Mac mindfulness, the cheaping, the stripping away of tradition, the modernization, the secularization of Buddhism in the West in the shallow sense. But for me, it was a bridge. I'm maybe more like the second type of people that you've described. So, these devices, I'm not. We should also, consider that, it could be a bridge for people.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, changing a little bit our themes now. Not changing too much, but you mentioned the distinction between the philosophy of science and the philosophy of technology. How do you understand that distinction, and why is it important when we talk about meditation and Buddhism?
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about it
Yeah,
in beforehand, but about the limits of science. And as a philosophy of science try to understand the limits of science. Maybe it's like one definition you can take, or try to look at the contours of the scientific method. And I think what we've discussed, we kind of, if you agree to the point where there's a limit to with the reductionist empiricist way to investigate meditation, and what eventually we could have, where can it finally leads us? It's a good question to have. But if we think about technology, I think for me, it goes all the way down to to what is meant to be human. Because if you think about, we don't know almost anything about our ancestors, or like the monkeys, but we know that at some point they had technology, and that at from that point and on, the species was getting on evolutionary um, lineage, or track that scaled it and changed it. And we know that we know that there's a correlation between stone tools and the brain size. I'm very influenced from Bernard Stiegler, who's a philosopher of technology, a French, which who's ever interested in his work, he really portrays an amazing theory which he names originary technicity, in which he goes, builds the argument, who says, like, if you try to see who invents who, like, man invents technology or technology invents man, you really can't get to the bottom of it. Like, you would never find the answer. And what comes out of it for him is that, we are, technological species in a very deep sense of the term. And for me, this perspective gives a very, I think, balanced way to think about technology. So kind of to avoid the extreme of being very enthusiastic about it, or being very pessimistic, or even catastrophic about technology, because it's part of our nature. It's like maybe the closest thing is like thinking about the way your parents raised you, and then you find all the demons when you do the psychotherapy. Oh, there was all kind of bad things in my childhood, or good things in my childhood, and I love my parents and I hate my parents. And like, at some point you reach to a point in your life when you grow up enough to understand, okay, there's a balance. Like, I see it more balanced. And I think, taking the originary technicity perspective gives us this balance. Okay, so we are technological. That doesn't mean we don't need to take action. But we don't want to fall to the extremes. We want to be super cool about it, and respect our technological nature. And I think this is a view that science just won't be able to give us, because and thinking about technology this way, we become less kind of we become more humble, and less because with science we have this, maybe we have this deep belief that ultimately it could give us the ultimate truth. That's maybe like a very naive premise of science, but I think it's very prevalent still even within the scientific community. But when we think about technology as something that is ever evolving, we always evolve with technology. We will always evolve with technology. We're just in this storm. Now let's think about meditation technologies, and like where we want to take it, where we want to go with it. Let's not be afraid. Let's not be, super excited about it, because it.
Yeah. And about this deep belief in ultimate truth, do you think it's only science that have this, or even or ancestors, like the traditions itself, with their targeting at awakening or final realization, or in our Buddhist terms like Buddhahood, Sangye, the perfection of all the qualities. Do you think this deep belief in an ultimate result is something that we always have as species, as human beings? And do you think it's possible? I know you don't think, not now. Do you think it's possible in a scientific sense with tools, gadgets, and data? But if I do my practice, if I reach a sangha, a good teacher, is it possible for me to reach this ultimate, or is just another type of belief, and we have to work with these two? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my belief and sense of, from practices is that, actually in Buddhism, you can have an ultimate, you can reach some ultimate dimension of reality and of life or experience. But it's something that you have to practice and you have to kind of try for yourself. So, if I would go and just talk to my friends about it, it would say nothing to them. So we have to be very careful when, you kind of, you don't brag. I don't think it's very wise to brag with it. But for someone which has the context, I think, we should talk about it. And actually, you spoke about Daniel Ingram, and in your book I read like how he affected you. So he was one of the first to actually, to talk about his enlightenment or his realization, and it opened the door for lots of people. So there is you have to be quite to navigate this with wisdom, but also I wanted to say about ultimate truth or ultimate reality, that so once you realized, or you live from the ultimate reality awareness or perspective of you, then you kind of also have this imperfect dimension of the relative of the actual, and then you kind of have both. So it's always complete and incomplete. It's like it's a middle way. This is more for our Buddhist geeks kind of I think audience here.
Yeah.
But my personal, I do believe in awakening.
Yeah, amazing. So, do you think we have made the mistake of assuming that a technology related to meditation has to be scientifically validated, measurable, or based on neuroscience in order to be meaningful? Like we have always an approval, or
I definitely think it's one of the problems. Because in Buddhist history, you go to Buddhist history, and not even could talk about history in a minute, but we can speak about this Zoom conversation and the Zoom conversations that I have with my teacher. It's a technology that I use and it helps me with my path. So it's a Buddhist technology, it's a technology for liberation in some sense, yeah. So, and it's not, and it's not scientifically validated in the way that it's not trying to quantify anything, or it's just mediating some kind of transmission or information. But in Buddhist history, if you go, so always you have like you have mantras, you have all kinds of sensory objects, and you have relics and amulets. And I was fortunate to meet a scholar which really influenced my thinking. His name is James Gentry. He's a scholar of historical Tibetan Buddhism, specifically the 16th century. and he researched the material history of this period, and how a specific master called Soktokpa was, making these rituals where he would, introduce the practitioners all kinds of bizarre and strange objects that within the ceremony and the setting of, it would argue that this, Brahmin flesh of past Buddha, could you touch it and you can get it to enlightenment. So it's not scientifically valid. Actually, it was more related to alchemy, and it was like, alchemy was big back then, even in Tibet. So maybe it had more to do with the techno-scientific, atmosphere of the age, you can say, which is also maybe something to consider or to think of. But and I think in this work, what I've learned is that, people were attacking this guy, calling him a charlatan, like, you're, promising people. And he always kind of, I think what was interesting to see was like he was trying to go, in some kind of between the drops, like between the drops of the rain, like trying to be really shrewd about the way. So not like promising, you have to do some practice. The practitioner has to have some qualities. He has to have the intention. He has to have, he has to be prepared for getting it. But within the right circumstance, and the practitioner, the setting, you can have a transformative moment with the help of like a sacred object. And yeah, I found it really fascinating. And maybe we're lacking this kind of material culture in our contemporary settings. Maybe because we are too much invested in the scientific measurement, way of seeing the world, or way of evaluating technologies.
Yeah, amazing. I like that you try to connect these techno objects from the past. Like, I remember even you sharing the book about this altar. Do you remember the name of the book now?
Which one? Which book?
This book about objects in Buddhism.
Yeah, it's the one I was speaking about.
Yeah.
It's called Power Objects in Tibet by
Yeah.
James Gentry. Maybe we can also
Amazing.
put a reference here.
Yeah. And I was watching some months ago the Tukdan documentary about the post-mortem stage in some practitioners even today. Really bizarre material, really interesting and curious thing. I even like to organize, for example, we have states, let's call it states now, but maybe it's not a state, but sometimes some states we can just feel in our own subjective experience, like almost like a software. So by practice, we're gonna affect my subjective world, my software. But sometimes we have practice and some realizations that affects the hardware itself, affects the body. So like people, not only in Buddhism, but in all the globe, changing the body, bringing, I call it the bizarre aspect in meditation. Like, and in this Tukdan documentary, the Tibetan doctors talking with the scientists, They're like just, you scientists keep saying about brain and brain and brain, but the truth doesn't come from the brain, come from the heart. And you guys don't have the tools to measure the heart. Of course, we have heart rate, heartbeats, but we can even call the bodhicitta, right? This
Yeah.
texture of compassion and wisdom.
The mind body.
The mind
The mind
body.
body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe all of these that we are talking today and the technological advancements, sometimes it can lack this heart aspect. And we don't have tools to measure this because, of course, we can measure brain signals, brain activity signals, like neurons talking to another neurons. But on these days, I have a profound belief that there's even other authors that call the original heart. We have to return to the original heart because we are too much brain oriented. And yeah, so if we were designing the future of Buddhist technology from scratch, not starting from Silicon Valley, neuroscience, productivity, or the quantified self, what principles should guide us for programmers, scientists, or even practitioners on these days working with vibe coding, AI? What principles should guide us in this journey to create packs with Buddhism or meditation in general? Yeah.
That's good. Thinking about this question a lot, and I have some ideas, but it's really, I think we're really in the really maybe early in these discussions globally, I mean, and I think we should definitely put our minds in thinking about these things because we can do some really amazing stuff, I think. But let's start, I think, with the fact that if we're thinking about emptiness and everything is empty, so technology is empty too. But so first, having the view that, technology is also empty, it's not something so deterministic, it's not so solid. We can, so that's, I think, first, like we want to bring this perspective from Buddhism to, to dealing with technology. And we spoke about before about being like more chill about technology, I think, in a way. But we want to move, I think, from emptiness of technology to technologies of emptiness. Ultimately, we want, like, if we want to have a guide or North Star.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, if we could have technologies that can help us do that. So we should have emptiness in mind, I think, as right now what we have, maybe we have like shamatha as North Star. We have like this concentration as North Star. But from at least from the Tibetan perspective, and I think most, maybe it's all traditions, not only Tibetan, but ultimately just concentration is not enough, or it's just a phase towards insight. So how can we, this is what we actually really want. We really want the insight stuff. But then, okay, it probably won't be able to come from just the brain, to say the least. So first I think about, so I just I'm thinking about maybe first of all taking the Eighth Noble Path, thinking about designing for a right view. So let's think about technologies, maybe, bringing back the 16th century examples. So these were really symbolic technologies. They used, mainly like their power was the symbolic power that they were infused with. So you were taking a bit of, taking a pill, and this pill would be like with the bless of, I don't know, some kind of a Buddha, a master, an imaginary being. So first of all, we should not only think about, what are these technologies, per se. We should also think about, how, and this is the cultural artifact, what kind of, stories and narratives and how we tell the stories of these technologies are really important for what people would actually gain from them. So maybe we can, if we take the Muse device and let's rebrand it, let's rebrand it as some kind of, I don't know, a wacko machine that, can, I don't know, you can talk to the god or something. But just trying to be provocative here for a minute and say, okay, we should think about this stuff, because right now I think we try to demystify meditation. We try to say, oh, all these Buddhists or all these hippies, they're not just hippies, they're actually changing, they're doing something to their brains. And yeah, we're doing something to the brain. But this is not, I think it won't get us very deep in, the cultural stories. And we don't need to tell the 16 Tibetan story. We should tell our own story. Maybe you in Brazil, you have your own story. Maybe here in Israel, we should have a different story. So it's something to think about. I'm not really, I don't have a definitive answer, but I think, having a right view where we're coming from, where we're engaging with these technologies, it's important. I think you want to comment, because I have another point.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I think also the other thing is designing not only for right view, but also for right effort. So as we spoke about it, we said, okay, who are we targeting when we're providing the device or the technology? So let's start with people and the path, and let's think about, what people needs in their beginning, what people needs in their intermediate phase, what people need in the more advanced stage. And also let's break it down for, emptiness, concentration, love and kindness. Let's break down the impermanence. Let's say we can build, maybe we can build a technology, to realize impermanence. Maybe we can have a virtual reality where you simulate your death. Like you see all the doctors, you're there, you're imagining you're dying. Like I did this drill within the Tibetan tradition. You're practicing dying, and so maybe we can have a VR, wrapping this thing, or maybe we can have, yeah, this is just one example, but I'm thinking about right now. The problem, I think, is that we say, okay, let's try to target, the layman who is never meditated. Let's try to give him some, some tool. Why? Because, there's a market opportunity within. There are many more people which never meditated, or just a little, than advanced ones. But actually, I think that advanced meditators, maybe they need a meditation headset that would, disturb them while they're meditating. I want, Kyle, I want to like really mess up your meditation and see how you go. Let's see if you can keep your theta wave.
Great.
If I'm starting to talk bullshit about your the party that you're voting for.
Yeah.
And this could be like, we need this kind of maybe we need these kind of things now in our world, where we kind of, you know, learned how to stay balanced with it. Because actually my experience is like we trying to meditate, trying to be concentrated, trying to work my emptiness, and still I'm like totally absorbed into,
Yeah.
you know, the media and swayed by it and getting irritated. And so yeah, maybe that's something that could, you know, be a Buddhist technology or, you know,
Yeah.
something that can help us.
Amazing. I love the last part of creating some text to disrupt our sense of certainty around our own realizations. And I was reading another author, and he was mentioned that, for example, the system, capitalism, brings too much certainty in our lives, and we lose the touch with the aspect of the uncertainty, because when we don't have certainty, we tend to be more creative. We use more, even nature, or not use, but we connect more, we believe more with the nature and the you know, the space that we are living. But with the capitalism, we just bring certainty and more certainty. And of course, it's not so precise as we tend to imagine, right? Even, for example, today, on these days, like with ecological crisis, so we have AI, but still my roof can be destroyed by a single storm and things like this. So maybe this, and not just EEG or neurofeedback, but text in general, maybe it's an interesting point that you bring. Maybe this type of technology can disrupt our certainties around the traditions, our own personal practice, and make ourselves more creatives and like artists. That there are aspects in arts that people just want to test and experiment, and almost like an alchemist. And sometimes an alchemist creates like an explosion inside the lab, and he will laugh, amazing, like an explosion. It gets wrong, but so I think on these days we are lacking this, like this uncertainty around everything, because we are every single day trying to find certainty in everything. And with internet, we have this feeling that, you know, we are like gods or something, because we have internet, AI, and instant connection. Makes sense? This part of like,
Yeah, some of it. Yeah, I think, you know, so yeah, in some sense, we're really afraid of uncertainty, but I think we're living in a time,
yes,
you
yeah.
know, we're not in the end of history anymore. We're very much in history. I think we all feel it.
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, like we also like need certainty, need some kind of, you know, something to hold on to. Um, so yeah, so in the end, you know, it's about a balance. You know, we can. It's like sometimes it's a cliche, right? But yeah, it's like finding a middle way. Yeah, I think with these technologies too. Yeah, within the context of, you know, neurotech and, you know, and maybe Buddhist tech. Yeah, like, you know, sometimes, you know, the cool thing in the path is it's open-ended. Like it's really open-ended. Like you don't know where you go right now. You're practicing something, you know, 2 years from now, you'll be probably practicing something totally different, which you still don't know. Um, Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet there is a path.
Yeah, there is definitely. So, my friend, do you have another thing to comment, to bring in our conversation today, uh, that you think it's important? I remember ourselves talking about maybe a quick list on different types of techs and gadgets outside the neuroscientific approach. And within my own research, I have a full list, a huge list of different types of tools, ancient and modern ones. And do you think, yeah, so the first question is if you have something to bring. And the second and last question for today, it's which types of techs are on your radar on these days? Like you think, this is interesting. For example, for myself, I'm really into video games. Not because I play too much video games. I don't have time, but my daughter, she has 7 years old now, and I'm teaching her the art of video game, because in my own generation, video game was for, I don't know, bad students, people, and it will screw my brain, and but I definitely think that for myself, and I want you to comment on this, technology is a way to discover new ways to tell stories in some sense. And we have the beginners in meditation who wants to buy Muse or other device to start their practice. But for example, with kids and teens, it's really difficult on these days for us to sit with them and say, there's a Rinpoche called Milarepa on Tibet, and there's a story of him flying, and Spider-Man do this, or Batman. But if we learn how to tell these ancient stories inside modern technologies, for example, if we can create beautiful, with good graphics, good mechanics, a beautiful video game to tell the Tibetan stories, and then the next generations, or the kids and teens, can play a little bit with controls or even with sensors, whatever. There's a lot of opportunities. Maybe it can create spaces for them to interest, not just in Tibet, but in the human life in general, right? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. And yeah, it's like, a way to bring tradition into the present, and bring it to the technological atmosphere. In some sense, I think you can escape many things. You cannot escape the technological logic of your era. So it's like with this Soktotpa, we spoke about alchemy. Right now, yeah, it's computer games and it's AI. And I was taking part in an amazing conference a few weeks ago in Gombe in Austria, like a Tibetan center. We had a Buddhism and AI conference, which was super interesting, and 70 or 80 people, scholars and developers, all gathered to really think about how AI and Buddhism should approach each other. And yeah, we have to do it, because that's part of who we are as humans right now. And yeah, I'm totally for it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so my friend, I want to talk for your time and presence today. I'm always love to talk with you about everything, but yeah, especially technology. And I will put on the description your work, your paper, and people can connect with you, like to talk about it, like.
Yeah, totally. One thing that maybe I want to say for an end is, like, I'm feeling like I'm really in the beginning of scratching the surface of of everything that we spoke about. So if anyone is interested, from a scholarly perspective, from development, yeah, let's do it.
Amazing. So, thanks a lot, Omer.
Bye, Kyle.
Bye bye and
Muito obrigado.
muito obrigado, meu amigo. Um grande abraço e tchau, tchau. Bye bye, my friend.
Ciao.